Hey everyone, this is Pete. Welcome back to Atari ST A to Z, a series of short playthroughs of Atari ST games, some of which I grew up with and some which are new to me. Today is one of the latter, actually. This is Beyond the Ice Palace by Elite. This was quite a well-known game back in the day. This is the kind that you got in a lot of different compilation packs and such like, and I believe there were several ST bundles that actually included it as well, because it was quite fashionable at the time for the Atari ST to come with a massive bundle of software and games, and this is one that you'd see quite often among it. But I've never actually played it. It's one that I always wanted to try but never actually got around to. So let's give it a look. This is a relatively early ST game, as I recall, and it's a platform action game with a bit of inspiration from Ghosts and Goblins in terms of the fact that you pick up weapons and you throw them. But it's got kind of a character and atmosphere all of its own as well. And it's got some nice atmospheric music by David Whittaker as well. He's a very well-known composer throughout both the 8 and 16-bit era. He did quite a lot of work on early ST games. So here we are. So the plot of this one is possibly the most cliched fantasy thing you can possibly think of. Is the balance between good and evil has been broken, and the community has decided that just one person is ideal to go and sort it all out, and that's you with your lovely green boots. Whoops. You are rather fragile, unfortunately. But you do have the ability to come back to life repeatedly, as shown by those hearts up on the status bar at the top. This is one of those delightful examples of games throughout the 8 and 16-bit era where developers felt the need to remind you of what game you were playing at all times while you were playing it. So they'd often have this lovely, intricately designed status bar which did very little that couldn't have been done with a simple bit of numbers and characters in the corner of the screen. But it was more often used as a means of just sort of showing off their graphic designers' capabilities with how nicely they could recreate the game's logo and that kind of thing. That's exactly what we've got here. In some cases it was done for technical reasons as well, because if you take up that much space on the screen with interface, then you have less screen that you actually need to update at a decent frame rate for the game to be playable. So in some cases it was done for that reason too, but I'm not sure which one it was for this. It certainly seems to perform pretty well. It's reasonably smooth, but very difficult. One thing you can do in this game is you can hit a key and summon a spirit to help you out, which is quite nice. How much you can do that is limited by the number of faces that you can see on your status bar, though. Whoops. Oh dear. And as you can see, it's one hit kill, so it's not terribly forgiving. Alright, we did okay there. Let's see if we can get a little bit further in another run through. We're still very much in arcade game territory at this point. And so games were typically relatively short in terms of total length, but very challenging. And a lot of the time, when you had arcade style or arcade ports on the home computers at the time, you either wouldn't have a continue system at all, like in this game, or you'd have limited... Ouch. That's not very nice. You'd have no continues at all, or you'd have a limited number of credits. In some cases, if you're lucky, you might be able to unlock the ability to use more continues, or perhaps there might be a cheat code that let you do something like that, but more often than not, if you messed up, that was it. Back to the beginning for you. This game is a pretty typical example of the ST sound chip at work. So, unfortunately, it didn't have very many channels available to it, which is why anytime there's a bunch of sound effects going on, you lose bits of the music. This wasn't an uncommon problem by any means. This used to happen on the NES, used to happen on the Sega Master System. Anything that had a limited number of sound channels to deal with would... the music would tend to suffer a little bit if there were sound effects happening at the same time. Right, I've got another spare spirit up there, so let's see if we can use one on something helpful down here. I'm really not entirely sure how those are supposed to work, because it seems that they just work just by if they actually collide with something, and given the way they move, they might just not hit anything at all, which is unfortunate. Right, we found a different weapon here. So these Morning Stars, they have a bit of an arc on them instead of flying straight like the daggers we'd be using. So you can see where the kind of Ghosts and Goblins ideas have come from. And this was not at all uncommon back in sort of the late 80s and early 90s to have games that were very obviously inspired by arcade classics or well-received games from other platforms. Just shamelessly ripping them off, basically. This bit is actually impossible. Yeah, I don't... Oh, that works. So the spirits are useful. There we go. Now I only have one life, though. Get out of here. Yes. No! Boss! And dead. Okay, we'll give that one more go, just so I don't drive you too nuts with my ineptitude. This game also reminds me very vaguely of the Bitmap Brothers Gods. Obviously, that came out a lot later than this and looked and sounded a lot better as well. But just the way the weapons are handled in this feels quite Gods-like. As in God, your default weapon was throwing knives like this as well. So, and you'd have to kind of throw them at an appropriate trajectory to hit things. Go away. Go away. Eat hot spirit. Or I'll just die. That's good too. Collision detection is mildly wonky on this. This was an age before hitboxes. Or an age before hitboxes that were smaller than your character sprite anyway. And that's when you're playing a game like this, you need to be aware of just how close you can actually get to an enemy without dying. Also, you know, I legitimately can't tell if that protagonist is male or female. Which is kind of cool when you think about it. Because it means that anyone can step into that role. Not that you need the protagonist of a game to actually look like you to enjoy it, of course, but, you know how people are these days. Oh no! Oh, I do keep my weapon, that's okay, because... Yeah, those Morning Stars are... Ouch. Those Morning Stars are much more powerful than the daggers, which is good. You coming back, platform? There you are. You'll notice we end up with... oh no! End up with a bit of an interesting issue there, which is that the platforms get out of sync with each other. Oh no! So that left and that right platform are designed to go at the same speed as one another. But because, according to where you're standing on screen... Oh, I'm dead again. Oh no. Because of according to where you're standing on the screen, one of them might be partially off screen. You'll often find that they get out of sync with each other. And again, that was not an uncommon problem in games from this era. Alright, I think we've seen enough of that for now. That is Beyond the Ice Palace, published by Elite in 1988 for the Atari ST. Hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.